It is really great to be here, and thank you NutriSoil for creating a forum for us all to share these 2 days and to focus our attention on something that is the bedrock of civilization, which is soil. And you know, we live in a time when a lot of people out there don't think about soil, even for a year or 2 years. And actually, you know, the life of the soil is the underpinning of everything. In fact, we know that if we had to measure what's really valuable, soil would be more valuable than whether the stock market went up or down, right? And because we all ultimately depend on the soil. So I appreciate the family here and the forum and the great opportunity to share. So what they've asked me to do is kind of go through our story and just hit some major points that may be helpful for all of us as we go forward. So our farm is in, those of you who don't know, and I'm not going to show slides. I'm going to try to create word pictures and bring you along with drama, okay? So just put your ears on because it's going to come like out of a fire hose, okay? So our family came to the farm in 1961 after losing a farm in Venezuela, South America. My dad was in the Navy in World War II, flew bombers and survived and lived to tell about it. And after World War II, went to college on the GI Bill, met Mom, and he always wanted to have a farm, but he wanted to have a farm always ready to do something new in a developing country. You know, the U.S. to him was already socialistic and over the hill, and he wanted to go to a new place. So, how do you go to a new place? You're a Midwestern kid, no money, no land, no anything. And so at that time, in the late 1940s, after World War II, was the beginning of OPEC and the petroleum boom and the whole, oil exploration time. And one of the hottest jobs in the world at that time was being a bilingual accountant for an American company developing oil reserves in developing places. And so, after majoring in economics, he went to Middlebury in Vermont for 6 months, learned Spanish, hitchhiked from Vermont, which is in the northeast of the U.S., down to Mexico, spent 6 months with a family, and then sat for the Foreign Civil Service exam in Spanish, passed it the first go, and got hired on with Texas Oil Company, today Texaco, into Venezuela oil fields as a bilingual accountant, because that's where the friction was. The managers were American and spoke English, and the workers were indigenous and spoke Spanish. And of course, they lived in the camp, in the oil camp, and bought at the company store. And so the friction was always about money. So they wanted the guy who handled payroll and the finances and all that to be this bilingual person, and paid pretty well. And so he did that. It took him 10 years to save up enough money to buy a farm. He and Mom had gotten married by that time, and had my older brother by that time, and then they had me, and we were out farming in the countryside. The goal was to do dairy and chickens in the countryside, and we'd already started chickens pretty quickly. Built a house, and we had a 1,000-acre farm there in the highlands of Venezuela. But the problem with developing countries is, yes, they're pretty open, but they're also tend to be unstable. And so we got caught in 1959 with a junta, the ouster of Pérez Jiménez, who was the dictator at the time, and essentially being Americans and having severed ties with the company and everything, we were prime targets for the junta and ugly Americans and all that sort of thing. And so we basically we fled the back doors. The machine guns came in the front door, lost everything. Fled for our lives, and spent a year in Caracas trying to get some sort of a settlement. But of course, everything ran on bribes, and we had a deed, but that didn't matter. Those who think the rule of law isn't important have not had this kind of thing happen to them. And so anyway, there was nothing to do but finally leave the country and lose everything. So Dad lost all of his equity, and I remember when I hit 41, which was how old he was when we left, I remember thinking, if I lost it all, would I start over again? And that day, Dad went way, way up in my estimation, because we did come back to the States, landed in Philadelphia, Easter morning, 1961, and began looking at farms. He was still hoping to go back when things settled down, because he truly left his heart in Venezuela. He loved the people. I spoke Spanish before English as a little child, and he loved the people. He loved the place, everything about it. And part of him died in that thing. So anyway, we came back and we looked at farms within a day's drive of Washington, D.C., and settled on a place in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, which was about 3 hours away from D.C. We did, in fact, I'll wrap that story up real quickly for you. We did, in fact, through the efforts of a journalist, Drew Pearson, who was a nationally syndicated journalist at the time, he met with us in Venezuela right before we left. And he came back and got in touch with the Venezuelan ambassador in D.C. and said, because the U.S. gives money all over the world. We steal it from ourselves and give it to everybody else. And so we were, of course, giving money to the strong man and all this stuff going on in Venezuela. And the U.S. government was telling the U.S. Americans that this foreign aid was important to take care of our friends in the government in Venezuela. And Drew Pearson, the journalist, called the Venezuelan ambassador. This is a fun story to tell because it's personal, but it's a world that most of us don't live in every day. And told him, if you don't give Salatins a settlement for taking their farm away, I will feature them on next week's broadcast, and you will not get another dime of U.S. aid. Because it will expose that you're not taking care of people, you're not taking care of things. And they actually did call us, and we went up there and gave us a token. But with that, Dad was able to buy a little herd of Hereford cows. And that's how we got restarted with a little token. Didn't buy the land or anything, but it did buy a herd of cows, little cows. And at that, and then about a month after moving into the house, the Ku Klux Klan burned a bale of hay on the bridge so that we would know, that the community knew that we were communist spies. Because we kids would break out in Spanish at the store, and people didn't know what Spanish was. They thought it was Russian. And our farm had been absentee owned for 3 cycles of 4 foreigners. So it was absentee owned. It came out of the original family in 1890. Our 2 pieces were sold in 1914 at a sheriff's foreclosure sale. Went out of the family, was then absentee owned and rented by neighbors and raped. That's why it was the armpit of the community and the worst, the most abused place in the area. And then it was bought by a family from New Mexico, which in our very conservative community of Swope there, nobody knew New Mexico was part of the United States. And all they heard was Mexico, and so it was owned by this New Mexican family for 4 years. They saved the house. The house was built in 1790. It's an American chestnut log cabin, and it was composting. Chimney had fallen off the end. Cows were living in it. Sheep were living in it. Beehives were under the floors. And so they salvaged the house, and then find out that their kids didn't want to have a farm, and so they sold it to a guy who'd made money in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia, in oil exploration, a Swiss family. They came for 4 years. And then a buddy of his he'd been in business with in Saudi Arabia, he owed money to. The buddy tracked him down in Swope, and in the settlement got the farm from this guy. So now we have a third family from Saudi Arabia owning the place. Well, this is Cold War. This is McCarthyism, communist. We were doing, school raids and classrooms and stuff. So here we come then from Venezuela. And these previous 3 owners had been there 4 years apiece. So, 49 to 53, then 53 to 57, then 57 to 61. Here we come from Venezuela. So by that time, the community knew that this house was essentially a hub of communist espionage. And, and so, that was our welcome wagon into the community. And so here we are. And then this weirdo starts talking about rotational grazing and doesn't plant corn and doesn't plow, doesn't even buy any tillage equipment, and doesn't put in a feedlot, and is just really, really weird. And so here we are, thrown out here. And the farm, the land had been abused by European occupancy for roughly 200 years. It had lost 3 to 8 feet of topsoil. We had gullies 16 feet deep. We measured them from the rill to the bottom. We had large areas the size of this room that were solid rock, that all the soil was gone, and it was just solid rock. I remember as a child being able to walk the farm and never set foot on a piece of vegetation. It was that barren. And in fact, we had so little soil that his dad started reading Andre Voisin and got and really understood he was one of the earliest adherents to intensive controlled grazing, what today we call mob stocking, herbivorous solar conversion, lignified carbon sequestration, fertilization. You don't think I can do that again, do you? So I've practiced. Okay. So we started doing this, and of course this was before Gallagher and Pell and Speedrite and all the electric fence companies. So he developed an portable electric fence system, made the components in our shop, and developed that system when energizers weren't very trustworthy. In those days, energizers were basically cobbled together points and condensers out of automobiles. And they had a physical, points that came together, and we'd all walk around with a little piece of emery cloth in our pocket. So every time we walked by an energizer, we'd open the box and shine up the points, because they'd get corroded and rusty, and spiders would build nests in there and all that stuff. And that's the way we began. And we had so little soil on the farm that Dad went to town and got used car tires, brought them home, mixed concrete in a wheelbarrow, put concrete in these car tires, packed it in there, pushed a 1/2-inch pipe down in there. He stacked these concrete tires on a tractor platform, drive slowly down through the field. My brother and I, we were like 5 and 8 years old. He was 3 years older than I, and the two of us were strong enough that we could get under these tires. And Dad would yell, and we would heave it off the tractor platform. And then he would go along and stick the electric fence stakes down in the 1/2-inch pipe in that concrete tire. And that's the way we built fence. See, the temptation when anybody comes from far away is to assume, well, they can do it because, they live in paradise. They have some unfair advantage. They can be successful because, they've got better soil, more rain, it's either colder or warmer, whatever you think paradise is. They have a spouse that actually likes to hear new ideas. They live in a community. They must live in a community that loves to spend more for food. That's how they can sell. We've got all these conceptions. Trust me, if I gave this presentation in Swope to my neighbor farmers, they would not believe it could work here. Okay? Because what we can do and what we can't do is not defined by circumstances, it's defined by what's between our ears. The weak link on all of our farms is not resources. The weak link is always imagination As my son Daniel says, he says, what we suffer from is not a lack of money, lack of resources. What we lack is constipation of imagination. Okay? And one of my vivid childhood memories was Dad going down to one of the neighbors, one of the old neighbors we had there. And, we were trying to make friends in the community as we came in. And of course, all of our neighbors had been there for, 6 generations, 7 generations. Here comes this new kid on the block. And he went and told this neighbor, he said, someday. And remember, this farm, all the community knew it because all these old geezers that neighbored us, they had rented the farm from time to time for the 35 years 40 years between 1900 and 1949 when that first family came and lived in the house and saved it. And so all the neighbors were familiar with the place because they had from time to time rented it. And the big joke was that part of the rental agreement at that time was that the landlord paid half of the fertilizer bill. And so the renter and the landlord would share 50-50 on the fertilizer bill. And that's how it was done because supposedly the fertilizer would add value and keep the land up. And the joke was that none of these guys ever put any fertilizer on that place. They put it all on their place. And so this was absolutely known as, we call it the armpit of the community when we came in. And Dad went down to this neighbor and he said, someday, we're going to have 100 cows on this place. And the neighbor laughed him to scorn. And Dad was not a public speaker like I am. He was a lot more introverted, and that affected him. He was in a depressed funk. I remember him coming home, and he vowed, he said, I will never again tell somebody what I'm going to do. I'm just going to do it. Because you can't push on a string. You can only pull on a string. He said, from now on, we're going to keep our mouths shut, be good neighbors, and we're just going to do it, and we're going to pull on that string. Now, do the neighbors think that we're, good today? No. They still call us bioterrorists, typhoid Marys, and everything else because they're genuinely afraid that our negligent attitude toward vaccinations and medications and adulterations and procrastinations and everything else are going to actually bring in disease, and they're going to lose their farms because our animals are going to make theirs sick. I mean, that's reality. But here we are. And in fact, now we're running, 200 cows. Okay, so we've greatly exceeded that, and we don't use the concrete tires anymore because all of those rock areas have 12 to 14 inches of soil on them. That soil grew over time, not because we hauled soil in, but over my lifetime, I've watched. It just like a scab on your skin. If you've got an injury, you got a scab, and where does it heal? It heals from the outside in, right? You get new skin around the outside, and the scab gets smaller and smaller. The edges slough off, and then finally it closes up, and you've got that one little final thing, and that itch, and you scratch off that last little scab, and you've got new skin, right? That's exactly the way our fields healed over time. These big galls, you could see it, the soil come in about 18 inches a year, 18 inches, 18 inches, 18 inches. And over 25 years, it gradually came in and then finally closed up, and now you can't find them anymore. So this is a great hope, isn't it? That nature can heal. I mean, this is why nature is fundamentally biological and not mechanical. And we in our Western cultures. We're so technical. We love mechanics. I mean, we are after all kind of an extension of Greco-Roman, Western, reductionist, linear, compartmentalized, individualized, systematized, pieces, parts-oriented thinking, right? And it's a very Western idea. As opposed to the Eastern, which is it's all about us. It's about community, and it's holism, and it's more us than me. And we're all related, and so here we are, and basic principles that we developed over that time. So we're looking, and Dad's question was, well, how do I make a living on this farm? And so we had numerous experts come in from the government, from private sector. I remember, these experts would come in, and all of their advice was, well, you have to plant corn, build a feedlot, borrow more money, build silos, feed silage, graze the woodlot, all that sort of thing. And instead, Dad, as an economist, understood that the chemical addiction was essentially like a drug addiction, and it was a rat race, and you had to buy more and more, and got less and less kick, and so that's the way the chemical approach was. And he came to this primarily as an economist. He knew that you could not outrun the adaptation and the erosion that came from the chemical approach. And so he's looking around and he says, well, how does nature work? If we're going to actually have a system that stands the test of time, how does nature actually work? And so it was pretty simple, really. It's elegantly simple, and nature is always elegantly simple. We're the ones that try to make it so complex it doesn't work. And one of the basic principles is nature has animals. There's no animalless ecology. Think about it. There's no animalless place on the planet. And what we have right now is we have a major driving movement with fake meat and everything else, and the veganism approach to eliminate animals from the landscape. And animals serve amazing purposes. They digest things. I mean, think about a compost pile. Compost piles are a little bit technical. I mean, you got to have the right temperature, the right carbon, nitrogen, microbes, moisture, all that kind of thing has to be just right. But in the gut of an animal, it's always the right temperature, it's always the right microbes, always the right moisture, okay? And so a ruminant, for example, can digest compost, if you will, biomass in 24 hours that would take 6 months in a compost pile and be a little bit technical and fragile to do. So animals speed up the carbon, the biomass recycling system because of their perfect conditions for digestion. Another thing animals do is they move fertility around. In nature, fertility tends to move from uphill, downhill. Gravity pulls minerals, it pulls sticks and twigs and biomass, it pulls it downhill, so you get fertile valleys and infertile hilltops. So one of the roles of animals in nature is to graze in the valleys, and because of predation, they want to get up on high ground to look around and see what's going to attack them. So they naturally tend to go up on high ground to digest. And where they digest, they poop, they urinate. And so the animals are drawing the valley fertility up into the highlands. That's one of the functions of animals. So there are a lot of functions of animals. So I said, well, we've got some grass here. Let's do. We got to have animals. So we started there, and then well, what about those animals in nature? Well, when you look at animals in nature, are they penned up in factory houses? Are they penned up in feedlots? Well, no. Animals move. I mean, it seems so simple, doesn't it, when you say it? But we live in a time when all of our experts don't think animals should move. They should be treated like some sort of a cabbage. And so animals move. Well, if animals move, that means we have to have mobile control, shelter, and water. All that has to be mobile, okay? Because if they move, we've got to be able to contain them, we've got to be able to shelter them, and we've got to be able to get them water. And so from that developed a water system that was part of our development, and we did this pretty much after Dad died. So Dad and Mom worked off farm. Mom was a school teacher. Dad was an accountant. Worked off farm all my growing up years. Took off farm income to pay the mortgage and pay the land off. So that by the time I got into high school, we didn't have a mortgage. The farm wasn't paid for. Great place to grow up, and wonderful experiences. but it was not a business, it was not a going concern, okay? And I'll get to that just momentarily, but I want to focus on this. So the animals move. So Dad developed a portable shade mobile in the 60s, early on. Portable electric fence in the 60s, before Gallagher and these other companies were developing it. Because we needed control and we needed shelter. I added the portable water. Back in those days, we built a few ponds, and we'd use an old wobble pump. Some of you old timers maybe remember the old wobble pumps. They were used on farms to run a steam threshing rig, to run the water into the boiler of the steam threshing rig. Back at, you put it up next to a pond or a creek, and you could pump the water in. So that's how we did. Today we've developed additional things way beyond what Dad would have imagined. We've got egg mobiles and gobbledygos and millennium feather nets and all, but all the infrastructure is mobile. One of the biggest problems we have in agriculture today is the cost of entry into farms. The infrastructure, stationary infrastructure, is so expensive that young people can't get in, and actually the cost of land is so expensive. So if you have a mobile infrastructure, suddenly you can place your farm, because all the infrastructure is mobile, you can place it on land that you don't own. The average farmer is now 60 years old. Business experts will tell us anytime an economic sector, the average practitioner moves over a median age of 35, that is a sector in decline. Well, in agriculture now it's 60, okay? So succession is now the operative word in agriculture. We desperately need, in the US at least, the demographics show that in the next 15 years, 50% of all agriculture equity, land, buildings, machinery, will change hands in the next 15 years. That has never happened in any civilization in a time of peace. It's only happened in conquest. The Huns come in and overrun Rome or whatever, okay? So yes, it's happened in conquest, but it's never happened in peace. Now, I'm not saying we're getting ready to go to war. All I'm suggesting is this is a disruptive time. It is new territory. No civilization has ever had that level of agrarian wealth transfer in a time of peace. And so mobile infrastructure allows us to have mobile farm operations that can stack on existing operations, so that, for example, there's not a beef cattle farm in the world that wouldn't benefit from a mobile poultry operation stacked on it, or an orchard with poultry underneath the trees, or a cattle operation with sheep, or a dairy operation with pigs or poultry. This idea of stacking with portable infrastructure allows young people to enter. Secondly, all of our infrastructure is modular, so it's mobile. One of the beauties of mobile infrastructure is you don't have to get a permit for it. It's not a building, so there's no building permit. It's not a machine, so there's no depreciation, so you just expense it. As far as the government's concerned, I don't own anything. I like that. That's pretty cool. So it's mobile infrastructure, and then the second one is modular, okay? Modular. Look, if you want to raise a chicken for the industry, what's the first thing you have to do? Build a $500,000 confinement house, right? But in our systems with modular infrastructure, you build a little one, you just cancel your Netflix subscription for a month, and you've got the cash to build one, and if you like it, you can build another one, and build another one, and build another one. We've got 150 of these modular chicken shelters, but we started them one at a time so you can scale up with retained cash flow and do it without any debt. So it allows you to get in at an embryonic state with cash and then scale a piece at a time, modular. So we're a big believer in scaling a business, not through building an empire, but through duplication. So it works here. So now we have a satellite here, a satellite here, a satellite here, a satellite here. This goes for any kind of business you can imagine. It completely changes it when we move from a centralized empire structure to a replicated, democratized structure for scaling. And the third M is that this infrastructure is management intensive. And of course, that's where the naysayers say, I got you now. Yeah, see, this doesn't work because, and they say this with a bit of condescending curly lip, as if, this would take more farmers. As if they can't imagine a worse scenario for a techno-sophisticated civilization than to have more farmers. I mean, it's like the worst thing anybody can imagine. Yep, guilty. Takes more farmers. How many of our rural communities are crying for people? Are donutting out of our rural communities, everybody going to the city. People are going to the city. The money's going to the city. So we call ourselves the reverse demographic. We're bringing people back out from the city. We're bringing money back out from the city, putting it in the rural economy. Our staff is a reverse rush hour. In the morning when all the farm people are going into town to work their town jobs to support their farm addiction, our staff's coming from town out to the farm to work at the farm. Okay? That's the reverse deal. And so while the average farm in America takes $4 in depreciable assets, that's buildings and machinery, not the land, but just machinery and buildings, takes $4 of depreciable assets to generate $1 in annual gross sales. So if you're generating $100,000 as a farm, you have $400,000 in buildings and machinery. Are you with me? Our ratio is 50 cents to $1. That's a big difference. Okay? So our equity is not in depreciable assets. Our equity is in what people know, what they know how to do, so what they know, their skill, and our customers. You can take all of our equipment, take all of our buildings, we don't care. Leave our people alone, leave our skill alone, and leave our customers alone. And the beauty is that no bank can ever come and say, I'm gonna repossess your skill. I'm gonna foreclose on your knowledge, right? And so that moves our equity from physical to non-physical. That's huge, okay? Because it allows us to be then, because it's management intensive, now we can, in this disruptive space that we're in right now, it creates nimbleness. There's a big business book out right now. It's not. The title is it's not the big that eat the small. It's the fast that eat the slow. And in business now, it's all about being nimble because our spaces are changing so much. From artificial intelligence to marketing, to Amazon, to the Uberization of everything, we're seeing a major collapse in big iconic assumptions in our world. And so being management intensive allows us to shift and flex just our management. So animals move. Well, what's another principle? Well, guess what? Nature tends toward perennials, not annuals. So if we want a farm that's really resilient, long-term sustainable abundance, and I love the title of this two-day thing, sustainable abundance. I love that. Because when people ask me, what gets you up in the morning? Well, what gets me up in the morning is the privilege and honor of being able to step out on the back porch and know that I can immerse as a participant in creation's abundance, to actually caress our ecological umbilical and tease out the abundance that's there. So many times our attitude in agriculture is that nature is actually a reluctant partner, that we've got to, I'm going to get you and tie you up and I'm going to make you produce this. When actually, nature is a benevolent lover that simply wants to be caressed into abundance. It's a very different mindset. Okay? So, perennials. Wow. Nature, yeah, there are annuals, but there aren't very many. It's all about perennials. And the energy flow is real different in perennials compared to annuals. Annuals are extracting out of the soil to put something up in this big vegetable, this big seed, barley, this fat carbohydrate thing up here. Whereas perennials are all about pumping energy down into the ground to create a bank account in the root system that can stand drought, flood, snow, wind, rain, all these pummelings, because it doesn't depend on seed to stay alive, it depends on roots to stay alive. And so the energy flow is from the soil out in annuals and from the out into the soil in perennials. So let's concentrate on perennials. How about water hydration? My goodness, it gives me great pause to realize, and it's similar here in Australia, to realize that 500 years ago, what is today the United States, grew more food than it does today. Now, people weren't eating all that food. We had 2 million wolves that needed 20 pounds of meat a day. That's 40 million pounds of meat. That's where half the bison went. We had herds of 6 and 7 million bison. I have a diary of a guy that went out through Arkansas in 1870. He went up on a hill, and he said, and I won't go into the details of how they measured this, but they did have an actual way to measure the size of these herds. He said, I saw a herd of bison 50 miles long, and they measured it by measuring miles per hour and then timing how long it took them to go by. And he said it was 50 miles long and 20 miles wide. That's not kilometers, by the way, that's miles, okay? 50 miles long, but even if it were kilometers, it'd still blow your mind. 50 miles long, 20 miles wide, and he said, I could not see any prairie between the bodies of the animals. Can you imagine a herd? That's before John Deere. Before plows. Before hybrid seed. Before Norman Borlaug, before the Green Revolution. Yeah, Audubon, the naturalist Audubon, sat under a tree in 1800. He recorded in his diary, he said, I have not been able to see the sun for 3 days because of the flock of birds flying over. 8% of the American landscape was water. Today it's less than 1%. Back then it was 8%. 8% water. Where'd all the water come from? 200 million beavers. 200 million beavers. And we now know by archaeology that some of these beavers were the size of a Volkswagen automobile. It's our archaeology now is similar to yours that's uncovering 9-foot tall wombats. Okay? And the mega fauna that was here and throughout Europe, the mastodons, the whole, we've got to appreciate that the amount of animal weight on the planet was 2 to 3 times as much as all the people and all the animals on the planet today. That should give us all pause to ask, and I'm the smartest thing? Really? So when we look to nature for the template, we're not just being nostalgic. We're not just being, those were the good old days. We're actually looking to these templates. How did that happen? How did they do that? So on our farm, every time we get a couple $1,000s, we build another pond. I know here you call them dams, okay? Same thing. Every time we get a little bit, we build another dam, build another dam. We're now up to about 1% on our place, so we've got a long ways to go. Your iconic waterman, who was the greatest water thinker perhaps in 1,000 years, P.A. Yeomans, okay, who developed the keyline water system. He said every farmer should aspire to 2 things. 1, eliminate surface runoff. Number 2, don't end a drought with a full pond, a full dam. Okay? So even in a drought, you have rain events. 2 weeks ago, right here, there was a massive flood. We just drove through it yesterday. Rochelle and Justin were telling me about, this road was flooded, and you could see all the debris and all the flooding and all that stuff. Just imagine if all that surface runoff water from 2 weeks ago had filled millions of little, this room-sized farm dams. I'm not talking about great big, government projects and big dams along the lakes and, in rivers and things. I'm talking about millions of small impoundments. See, and I realize some of you are sitting here saying, well, that'd be illegal. Well, that's something you got to work on. But, we call our dams fertilizer factories. So for our accounting, this isn't a capital investment, it's spending on fertilizer. Why? Because the best fertilizer you can ever get is water. Okay? Why is it accounting allows you to deduct your expenses if you go buy fertilizer, but if you build something that you don't have to buy fertilizer anymore, you can't deduct it? Now, is that legal? I have no clue, but that's what we do. And I really don't care. See, here's the deal. We need some people that will step out and push the fringes because our planet's crying for our caress. And if we wait for the government to get it, we're going to be as stupid as they were on Easter Island when they cut the last tree. The government is never going to be innovative. The role of the government is to maintain the status quo. That's the role of the government. Innovation always comes from the lunatic fringe. It always comes from the radicals, the heretics, the weirdos. Okay? That's where the innovation comes. So we need to be those innovators and start calling it different names. That's not a dam, that's a fertilizer factory. When the bureaucrat comes, that's not a dam, that's a fertilizer factory. Huh? And start a radical conversation about hydrating the landscape. Because I don't need to tell you all that hydration is important. There is way more, across the planet right now, in every, moderate landscape, desertification is proceeding apace. This is my 16th trip to Australia. So after this trip, I'm putting in for dual citizenship. And I just love Australia because actually many of the mentors that I follow, I haven't met them all, but the ones that are world famous come out of Australia. People ask me, well, why do all these great people, from yeomans to permaculture, Bill Mollison, Dave Holmgren, Peter Andrews, stream remediation, Christine Jones, probably the best agronomist in the world, Colin Seiss now, pasture cropping. You can just go down this list of people. Charles Massey, you've got these iconic people. Why are they all coming out of Australia? Well, because Australia is a fragile landscape, but it's the wealthiest country in the world. Australia has the highest per capita income of any country in the world. Maybe you didn't know that. Maybe you don't feel like that, but that's. Now, I realize it all floats on mining, which is another discussion, okay? But the fact is, every other fragile ecosystem in the world is impoverished. Kid in Sahara, he's just trying to live another day. You guys are desertifying as fast as any other part of the world, but you can still go out and buy fruit because mining keeps your money up. And so there's wiggle room here to do experimentation because experimentation is expensive, okay? And so the wealth creates a little bit of wiggle room and opportunity to do tests and have failures and do experiments and be on the cutting edge of things. So that's my own little, I haven't read that in a book or anywhere. I just sucked it out of my thumb. That's what I think. All right. But water hydration is a big deal. So we're building dams. Every time we get a little bit, we build another dam, We just keep building them. Carbon. How does soil fertility occur? Goodness, how did all this production happen before 10-10-10 and 20-30-0 and all the other chemical fertilizers? I mean, to read the average person, you'd think, there's no way that all this could have happened, without some sort of chemical fertilizer. Well, look at nature. How does nature do this? It does it with carbon recycled in situ. Nature doesn't ship carbon around very much. Nature pretty much builds soil from solar energy turned into biomass that's decomposed on site. Okay? That drives the biology in the soil. It's the brown material that brings the carbohydrate into the soil and feeds all of the soil microorganisms. And so can we create a regenerative system on the farm, in site? So one of the first things, so we bought in, I don't know what, it was maybe 1970, 71, bought our first chipper, wood chipper. So while other people are buying fertilizer, we bought a chipper and we began going to the woodlot, and every woodlot needs to be weeded. I'm a big believer in the permaculture idea. We need more forest and fewer trees. Our forests are in desperate need of being thinned out and weeded and take out the diseased, the crooked, the junk, and concentrate the solar energy onto good, productive, healthy stems. That reduces fire. It increases the productivity of good stems. So it needs our management and our stewardship. And so we got this chipper and we began looking at our woods, at our forests, as a biomass bank account, if you will, that we then integrated with our open land to do large-scale composting. So that became a carbon feed into our system. And guess what? By doing large-scale composting and turning it with pigs and pigerators rather than machinery, so we don't have big compost turners. We make thousands of tons of compost using pigs to turn it. We call them pigerators. And so doing this, it allowed us to generate our own fertility on site using the carbon bank account that we already had. And this creates a carbon economy, okay? So rather than purchasing everything off-site, sure, we purchase minerals, we purchase supplements and things off-site, but the guts of the fertility program is recycled carbon on-site, okay? This creates a carbon economy. There are social implications to this as well. One of the biggest problems we have today, if you're in business circles, you go to any business conference and they're all standing there wringing their hands saying, wow, what are we going to do for the 40% of the population that actually wants to work with their hands? Go to any business conference today and what they'll tell you is that in the next 5 years, 50% of the jobs have not yet been invented. That's how fast we're moving into artificial intelligence, all sorts of things. I mean, have you seen the new John Deere tractors with no seat or steering wheel on them? It's just a little tennis ball sized bulb hooked into a laptop GPS, and it just goes and you program it and it just drives around. It's a really funny looking thing with no seat, no steering wheel, no clutch, no nothing, it just goes. Pretty amazing. So what do we do? The thought among the elitists of our culture, the thought that we still have people that don't aspire to fight the commute to town, to sit in a Dilbert cubicle all day, punch numbers into cyberspace? You mean there are people that don't want to do that? Yeah, lots of us. So how do we create human life affirming tasks and vocations for people who actually want to viscerally participate with tactile substance? I suggest the carbon economy is one way to do it. So we have, if we took all the money we currently spend on chemical fertilizer and we spent that on carbon regeneration, we would have an entire industry of people with chainsaws and chippers and communities like sheep shearers used to come through. Now we just call up the crew and they would come and spend a week at our place and generate all the carbon we needed for a year, and we start doing our composting and we'd have all of our own fertility, and this would create people actually working on the land, generating our own carbon. It doesn't cost any more money, but what it does is it puts the carbon in the ground. And if we did that, our soils would actually grow earthworms instead of being toxic to earthworms. And so by doing this composting over our lifetime and moving the cows every day to a new spot and all that we do, we have moved the farm. I told you what it was like when we started. We've moved it from an average of 1% organic matter when we started to today 8.2% organic matter. And when you realize that every 1% increase in organic matter is equivalent to a holding capacity of an additional 75,000 liters of water per acre, 7 clicks, all right, is 500,000 liters of water per acre that we can now hold that we couldn't hold in 1961. Multiplied by 100 acres, now we're going beyond, what I can even, it's millions of liters of water that we can now hold that we couldn't. So what's the key to all this stuff? It's soil carbon. It's building the porosity, the life, the biology in the soil. And now we actually have people who come out with tape recorders in the spring to walk through the fields, have the whatever you call it, the mic down low to the ground to record the sucking of the earthworms in as you walk along. As you walk along, they hear you coming and they suck in. There's so many earthworms that you can actually record the sounds of the earthworms sucking into the soil. Okay? And so, carbon. And finally, you look throughout the system, and what you see is the majority of a person's diet throughout history did not come from a distance. Yeah, we've always had the spice trade. We've had salt routes. We've had stuff like that. But the majority of people's diets came locally. And Dad understood very early on as an economist, as a small farmer, we could not compete at the commodity scale because the margins are so low, we couldn't get enough turnover of anything, whether it's pounds of beef or apples or whatever it is. As a small farmer, we cannot compete at the commodity scale because the margins are so small, we couldn't get turnover. So guess what we had to do? We had to wear that notorious middleman's hat. Okay? That notorious middleman. And so we became a middleman. So we said, we're going to brand it, we're going to process it, we're going to sell it, market it, and we're going to distribute it. And so all of those demonized middlemen that make all the money that we farmers complain about, if that's where the money is, sign me up. I want to be one. And so we began doing that. So I was 10 when I got my first chickens, and started selling down at the curb market when I was about 12 or 13. So all through, school, every Saturday morning I was up at 4 o'clock in the morning to be down there because it opened at 6 back in those days. This is the precursor of today's farmer's market. This was called a curb market. It was developed in the Depression because farmers were long on food and short on money. So it was a place where farmers could bring stuff into the city, and the city could buy, and the farmers could have cash. And by the time I came as like a 14-year-old, it had dwindled. It was the going place. I mean, it had like 100 vendors, and it was in the 1940s. It was the equivalent of Woolies and Kohl's combined in the city. But it had dwindled and dwindled and dwindled down to where when I came as a 14-year-old, there were just 2 elderly matrons and me. But I wouldn't trade that experience for the world, for what those 2 surrogate grandmas taught me about marketing, presentation, dealing with customers, the financial end of it, all that stuff. They took me under and mentored me, these 2 surrogate grandmothers. One of them made potato salad with sweet pickles. That was the first time I'd tasted sweet pickles, and I started looking around for a wife that knew how to make sweet pickles. I found her. and married her. So today I get sweet pickles. So anyway, I grew up doing this, you know, and direct marketing, and this was going great. Another thing that moved forward at this time was just communication, communication refinement. Okay, I always had a little bit of a gift of gab. I remember Dad always telling me that in third grade, when he and Mom went to the PTA meeting, Parent Teacher Association, you know, meet the teacher night. In third grade, the teacher said, "Mr. Salatin, you have no secrets." And so, you know, we never had a TV, still don't have a TV. And I think that's one reason why we can get so much done. But for fun, I'd come home, do chores, feed chickens, wash eggs, stuff like that. And then I would sit down at the table, and just for fun, imagine this, I would write fiction stories. In third, fourth, fifth grade, okay, this was my entertainment, okay, write fiction stories. I know some of you say, well, that's weird, but let me assure you that communication is a skill you'll never regret, okay, because storytelling and theater are key to moving movements forward. And so this stood me in good throughout high school and everything. I never played sports. In fact, you know, I got cut from the teams. I was a little chubby kid, late bloomer, you know. Mom was a phys ed teacher, so imagine, you know, being unable to play sports. But I decided instead of being upset about it, I would focus all my attention on storytelling, communication, and developing my theatric skills. So through high school, I played in all the plays and drama and debate and all that stuff. And this stood me in good stead when I came back to the farm full time. So what happened was, we came back, we'd saved up enough money. Teresa and I were living in the attic of the farmhouse on $300 a month. We drove a $50 car. In fact, we took our honeymoon in this $50 car. We bought it for $50. I drove it for 2 years and sold it 2 years later when it threw a rod, and I sold it for $75 for parts. That's the way I like to buy cars. In fact, we'd been married for 20 years, and we added up our cumulative expenditure on automobiles over 20 years, and it wasn't $10,000. So, but we had one vision, and that was to farm full time. How do we do this? And so after college, I came back and worked back at the newspaper where I'd part-timed in high school. And we started saving money, and within 2 years, we'd saved up enough that living as cheaply as we did, we never went out to eat, we never drove anywhere. If we didn't grow it, we didn't eat it. We had our own firewood for fuel. I mean, we lived in the attic apartment. You can call it an attic. We called it our penthouse. I mean, it's, you know, half full, half empty, right? And so we decided at that point, let's make the break. We have enough money to live on for 1 year. Let's make the break. And so we did. And I fully expected that the money would run out and we'd have to go back at least a while to outside income, but we never did. And it was tight, but it was good. And so we started selling. We started doing these chickens and selling beef, and I started, you know, I put, you know, some of you might remember the old Kodak carousels, you know, and the slides. And I took these slide programs to civic clubs in the area. You know, every area has its Rotary and Ruritan and Civitan and Kiwanis and JCs and Toastmasters. I mean, there's a million civic clubs in an area. And I would start going to their dinner meetings as a guest, you know, entertainment, explaining how we can heal the planet with pasture-based livestock. And we had people interested. And so we built it through education, samples, and evangelists. And, you know, then, so we're coming along there in the mid-'80s. And, you know, then I think a lot of life is all about finding your sweet spot. And your sweet spot is the intersection of three universes. The three universes are what you know, what you're good at, and what you love, all right? If you know, knowledge, skill, and love, all right? And where those intersect, that's your life sweet spot. And we had definitely found that. And we knew some, we had some skill, but we had a lot of love for what we were doing. And so as things grew, we began to enjoy that sweet spot. That's what I call your soul, what gets you up in the morning. That's what you would do if you didn't get paid for it. If time or money were not an issue, what would you do? See, the problem is many of us are skilled at things we don't love. 80% of Americans don't like their jobs. Okay, so we know a lot and are skilled at things we don't love. So trying to intersect those is good. And so about that time, a local restaurateur moved into the area. This was just the beginning of the local restaurant movement. And this local restaurateur moved in, and she came out to see us, and she said, I want to get your stuff. This put us into restaurants, and I loved her business card. She handed it to me and said, the business card says, the answer is yes, what's the question? That's powerful, okay? The answer is yes, what's the question? I like that. And so we were moving along. Allen Nation had discovered us. I'll just put a plug in here for Stockman Grass Farmer magazine. Other than my dad, my greatest mentor was Allen Nation, the founder of Stockman Grass Farmer. And it's a privilege now to be the editor of that magazine. It's the world leader in pasture-based livestock management and direct marketing. So, and it is available electronically, so you can get it, cheaper. And I would highly recommend it. If for nothing else, my editorial every month. But anyway, that's a shameless plug. The point is that Allen Nation discovered us. He found us and asked me to start writing a column for him. And then we, then the publicity started. Wow, there's this couple down there in Swope. They've got this little farm. They're making a full-time living, on what? Direct marketing and these pasture-based things, and the media started coming and all this stuff, and people started calling, how do you do these chickens, all this stuff. And so I wrote the first book on the pastured poultry profits in the manual was in 1991, and then we got the visit. You're illegal from the regulators. You can't have an outdoor processing facility. Where's your license? You know what? It never occurred to me that this could be illegal. What do you mean? You mean I can't raise a chicken, butcher it, and sell it to a neighbor? What planet are you on? This is the asset of being naive. So I ask people, don't ask permission, just do it, and you can always ask forgiveness if you want to. It's a whole lot easier. But things started to fall apart pretty rapidly there. So we were told that we were illegal. They confiscated our beef at the slaughterhouse, said we were selling illegal meat because we were doing it. We were selling freezer beef, custom, and basing the price on carcass weight. And they said if the price is based on dead weight, then you're selling it after slaughter, even though we had all the names prior. Some of you that are in this, the nuance I'm talking about. And so it was a low time there. And we immediately got our elected officials in. I've learned that the only people who you need on your side are the elected officials. Because the bureaucrats, the only people they fear are the elected officials, because they're the ones that hold the power of money and can turn the gates on and off, the valves on and off. And so there's no sense talking to bureaucrats. All they know how to do is say no. And we got our politicians involved. And what we found was it didn't matter whether you were liberal or conservative or greenie or socialist or libertarian. All the politicians wanted us to be successful. I mean, who doesn't want ecological, local food in their area? Who doesn't want that? And so we had a lot of help there. It took several months to work that through, but we finally won, and they backed off. I don't think they were used to working with somebody like us. Fortunately, all of my debate and communication experience made me able to to not bow. I know I'm pushing y'all a little bit here, but civil disobedience and societal change are powerful things. Think of what Gandhi did in India. All societal big change happens one at a time by conviction. And I remember when they were standing there in the outdoor processing shed and they said it was illegal. The week before, we'd had a guy show up at our front door, and he's 50 years old or so. He's carrying his wife in his arms. She's 80 pounds. Knocks on the door. We're eating supper. I went up to answer it. This guy standing at the door, holding his wife. He said, "My wife is going to die if she can't get toxin-free meat. The doctor says she has to have toxin-free meat. Can you help me?" I said, "Absolutely." And I told those regulators standing there, I told them this story of this lady that had come, that guy that had come with his wife the week before. I said, "Let me tell you something. You have in your hands and in your regulations, in your hearts, you have the ability to either make it difficult for her to get help or easy for her to get help. We're going to make sure she gets toxin-free food. All right? You can take me to jail. You can do whatever you want to. She's going to get our stuff. We're not going to chlorinate it. We're not going to build a $500,000 facility. We're not going to jump through your hoops and irradiate everything and do antimicrobials and all the things you want to create toxins in our meat. We're going to give her toxin-free meat. It's up to you to decide whether you want to be an impediment to her health or an asset to her health." That was a turning point. They had never been talked to that way before. They were used to heady, eclectic, academic focus group discussions about legalities. They were not used to story and emotion and practical reality. And because see, if you want to see me get up on my hind legs, you just be a bureaucrat, come out and tell me I'm just doing my job. That's what the Nazis said when they pushed the buttons at Auschwitz. You're not going to find me friendly when you say, I'm just doing my job. Okay? So this is part of conviction, all right? And so we fought that battle with the politicians on our side, and we won. We punched out through the other side. We're up and running. So then a guy comes, a lady actually calls. She says, I want to get into these egg business, but I don't want to raise the chicks. One little thing. I've never gotten over the fact that when I was first wanting to come back to the farm full time, I was doing business plans, I was doing stuff, what can I do? We'd always grown up milking a couple cows. And at the curb market, the beauty of one of the reasons I'm so adamant about this is because I grew up at the curb market. There was an agreement between the Food Safety Inspection Service and it would be Land Care in Australia, between Prime Safe, do I have that right? And imagine an agreement between Prime Safe and Land Care that if you're a member of Land Care and go to their meetings, you are exempt from all the food regulations. Because that shows that you are getting the latest, greatest information from the government, from Land Care. I mean, that's what we had. And so I milked Guernsey cows. We made cottage cheese, butter, yogurt. I butchered chickens in the backyard, rabbits. We'd shoot a beef in the field, hang it up in the shed, cut it out, fresh round steak. I grew up doing this. I'm not that old. But we had this wonderful freedom to be able to do it. And you know what? By being able to do that, we could sell at competitive retail supermarket prices. Not jacked up because it was organic, not jacked up because it was pasture raised, but we could sell at competitive retail prices. And so half of our customers were not coming because it was good, they were coming because it was affordable. And so this was not elitist food. This was not, well, you have to be rich to get this food. This was very, very democratic, everyman type opportunity to get the best food on earth, because we didn't have to squeeze through as a small operation. We didn't have to squeeze through the industrial regulatory hurdles. And so I grew up doing this. And so when I'm sitting there thinking about how am I going to make a living on this farm, my first thing was I love milking cows. We milked them, it was great. And I did the math on it. I said, man, I could milk 10 cows and sell the milk at regular retail price and make a great living. There was only one problem. It was illegal. And I've never gotten over the fact that the government kept me off the farm. Our customers were happy, our neighbors were happy, the cows were happy, I was happy, everybody was happy, but somebody decided that voluntary consenting adults cannot engage in freedom of choice. Okay? And for me, what more important, intimate right, human right is there than for me to be able to choose what to fuel my internal microbiome? That certainly is as important a human right as worship or speech or name any other. The right to your stuff. Okay, so this lady says, grow some chickens for me. Fine. So we grew her chickens. They start to lay. I called her up. I said, okay, your chickens are ready. Come and get them. She said, oh, I've changed my mind. I don't want them. Suddenly we have all these pullets that are starting to lay. Now, I don't know about, the thing is, when women start to make eggs, you can't say quit. I mean, they just do, all right? And so these chickens started laying eggs. What are we going to do? So we got involved with a fella, one of our customers. So we started doing, buy 10, get one free, all this stuff. We had one of our customers, he came and he saw this. He said, this is immoral. You got the best egg in the world and you can't sell it. That's like giving away gold. He said, give me 30 dozen or sell me 30 dozen. Okay, gave him 30 dozen. 2 days later he comes and says, can I come and get 60? Yeah, he comes and gets 60. 2 days later he calls and says, can I come and get 90 dozen? Well, by this time, look, he's empty nester. He had 5 kids. He and Bonnie are living, themselves. I knew he and Bonnie weren't eating 60 dozen eggs in a day. I said, the name was Clinton Miller. I said, Clinton, what in the world are you doing with these eggs? Well, I didn't know what he did for a living. I just knew he was a good customer. And what he did for a living, he was a lobbyist. Yep, one of those kind of people for the National Health Federation. And he was in D.C. whining and dining, the politicians and stuff, going to restaurants that we never went to. And taking these people around. Well, he'd take our eggs into the chef in the back, and the chef, where did you get these eggs? I've got to have these eggs. And so this guy was a quintessential entrepreneur, and he said, how soon can I get 600 dozen eggs a week from you? So, well, it'll take, I got to order the chicks, grow them for 5 months, then, sell them, and then they got to go through a month of pullet stage, and then you can have them. He said, well, you do that, and I'll sell them for you. At that point, by that time, we were getting all these requests from young people who wanted to come and apprentice with us and learn how you little farm like this, how do you make good money, make a white collar salary farming on a little farm like this. And so we said, we can launch our apprenticeship program because now we've got something for them to do. And we've got enough work to do, and so we can launch the apprenticeship with the egg thing and all that. So that was what I call a step year. A business is never just one like linear thing, right? Rochelle, you have step years. You make expansion, you invest a bunch of stuff, and then you kind of tie a knot and you hold on to it for a year and kind of metabolize that, and then you go along and then you make another big step. Well, that's the way it is. And so that was a step year for us, and we started the apprenticeship program. And this moved us forward, and increased additional media and attention and all that stuff. And so as we move forward, we then by this time now, GMOs start, genetically modified organisms. Oh boy, a new problem. And we went to our mill and we said, you know, we want GMO-free feed. Well, they laughed at us. Oh, you know, it's all the same, doesn't matter. So I started looking around the area for a mill. And I found this Amish Mennonite farm that had a mothballed 1950s mill in a barn, and turned out that I got in the middle of a family friction because the son who was now running the farm wanted to tear the old mill down because they weren't using it. And of course the dad, who had built the mill in the late 40s and used it all through 50s, you know, he wanted the son to keep it up, keep the gutters up, keep the building painted and all that stuff. So when I went to the son and said, hey, you know, would you be willing to grind and mix some GMO-free feed for us? Oh, he jumped, he said, oh, I'd love to do something with that stupid old mill, you know, and have something coming through. So they started in, and we were up and running with GMO-free. And, you know, I'd call, they'd mill what we needed. We'd go over there with the feed buggy and pick it up. Well, this thing started to snowball as more people, you know, found out about it. So, you know, within a year or two, we're growing, we're expanding. And then, you know, I asked him one day, I mean, I'm losing Daniel, you know, like 2 days a week running over there and getting the feed and bringing it home in a kind of precarious situation with a 4-ton feed buggy on the back bumper hitch of a pickup truck. And we had an apprentice that just about took out a school bus, and nobody was hurt and nobody wrecked, and he made it home in one piece, but that kind of got our attention. I went to these guys and said, have you ever thought about getting a bulk truck? Oh, we would love to get a bulk truck. We're just financially strapped. We just don't have any money. You know, we're trying to get this mill up and running, and we just don't have any money. I said, what if I gave you a 3-year no-interest loan? He said, oh, that would be manna from heaven. I said, okay, it's done. Go get your truck. I'll give you a 3-year no-interest loan. You can pay it all back the first day, or you can pay it all back the last day. I don't care when you do it. Go get your truck. So within a week, they bought a truck. I wrote them a check. Suddenly, I had Daniel back 2 days a week, okay? And we weren't putting our buggy out on the road and having to repair tires and all that stuff. And this catapulted that little GMO-free mill into now they are the go-to place with 3 or 4 employees. They've expanded. I mean, they're now they are the GMO-free mill in the entire Mid-Atlantic region, serving a radius of about 200 miles, so 400-mile diameter area. Just a wonderful thing. It's amazing sometimes what a little bit of seed money can sprout in an area. And so then this is up and running, and we have these Maryland ladies coming down. Call them the Maryland ladies. There were 4 of them for Maryland, about 4 hours away. They come about once a quarter, and they would buy stuff. They'd call the day before, say, we're coming tomorrow. You know, you're going to be home. Yeah, we'll be home. Sell to you, fine. So they'd come out, and they were serious buyers. I mean, those 4 ladies would come in. Most people would come in the sales building on the farm, and they'd, you know, get a pound of ground beef, a dozen eggs, you know. But these gals, I mean, they had their little, what do you call them, eskies, or, you know, coolers, right, with little wheels on them. They'd roll them up. They'd open the door and just, you know, rake it out, you know, chickens, T-bone steaks, whatever, you know. And I mean, and they would buy like $800 every time they came. We kind of got to like these Maryland ladies. And, you know, some people play bridge and whatever around. Well, this was their day out. Once a quarter they would come, and they'd come and they'd stop at a couple of antique stores and see if there was anything left that the Yankees hadn't all carried off, and then they'd have dinner in town, come on out and buy stuff. Well, this went on for, you know, a year and a half, and one day one of them pulled me aside. She said, we got a lot of friends. And I'm saying, I think I'd like to meet your friends. So, we have tried to get them to come down with us. We've offered to carpool. We've given them price lists. But, you know, they've got soccer practice. They've got, you know, elders meeting. Their life's busy. What would it take for you to come to us? Well, you know, I didn't want to have to go to them. I mean, I wanted to be on the farm. I didn't want to, deliver to the city, but in true entrepreneurial, intuitive fashion, with no business plan, no pencil pushing, no calculations at all. I said, I don't know, $3,000. Get us $3,000, we'll come to you. I figured I'd shut them up. What I didn't know was that one of them, the elder one, was one of these inner city urban metaphysical guru, know thyself, yin yang, get in touch with your inner being, and she had weekly meetings with her disciples. And so she'd written 7 books. And so the next week at class, she told everybody, she said, okay, everybody, I've found our food. Here's where you sign up. The next day she called me, she says, I've got your $3,000. When are you coming? What do? Drive, baby. That launched the Metropolitan buying clubs, all right? And so this was a brand new thing. We were just starting about the time Daniel and Sherry got married. We had picked Sherry out for Daniel. So they got married, and here we have a new daughter-in-law. Now, a new daughter-in-law in a business, in a family business, can be interesting. Son-in-laws can be interesting too. The point is in-laws, because they didn't grow up doing it this way all the time. So they got these strange questions and off-the-wall ideas. And have you thought about this? And so Sherry comes up like any good daughter-in-law would, and she's looking around the family business, poking around. Where can I fit? Where can I find a little spot here? And she spies this little fledgling kind of Metropolitan buying club thing. It's 30 families, it's $20,000 a year. It's just a kind of a trial, new kind of marketing angle that we're looking at. And she says, I'd like to take that over. Okay, but we didn't know if she could sell anything. So I'm thinking, all right, now wait a minute. She wants to take this over. If she wants, 15, 18, $20 an hour, what if she can't sell anything? What if she works and I'm paying all this money and she's not producing anything? What if she's a shyster? What if she just is thinking for an easy money and not married into this family? Everybody thinks we're rich. We're not. One of the reasons I think that we've been able to do what we do is because we were poor, we were hungry, we didn't have Swiss bank accounts, we didn't have off-farm income, we were just there, and hunger spurs creativity, okay? So if you're a little bit strapped financially and hungry, that's an asset, it's not a liability, because you will be more creative and innovative. All right, so what if she was a charlatan? What if she was just looking for some easy money and she really wanted to just sip coffee while we paid her $20 an hour to do this stuff? So I said, I'll tell you what. I said, how about, and then they'd have to fire my daughter-in-law, which would not be good for a family function. So I said, how about this? How about we just pay you a straight 5% commission on all sales? All sales you do, 5% commission on gross sales. And if you don't sell anything, you don't get anything, and if you sell something, you get something. To her credit, she said, "Yeah, that's good. That's good. I'll be glad to do that." A lot of young people wouldn't. They'd want that guarantee. See, we're seeing that more and more and more. This entitlement idea. Okay, so fortunately, this was just before millennials, and she was not entitled. She grew up hungry too. So she said, good, I'll do that fine. And in 10 years, she took that to $1 million business. Okay? So, where I'm going with this is, as things developed and as things grew, we started needing these partnerships, because you can't do it all. Okay? You can't do it all. And so as we began to scale, we're starting to look at, bringing other people and other things on. And so we don't want employees. We don't want employees because that are on hourly work, because employees on hourly work are always tension. Those of you who've ever hired anybody, you know that there's always this question, are they spending too much time at the water cooler? And those of you who've worked for somebody else, you know there's always a tension. I think I'm kicking tail and they don't appreciate it, right? So that's why we have all this labor management tension. So I'm going to present something to you that could be revolutionary for some of you that are in this spot. How do you develop additional help on the farm? How do you develop additional enterprises? I know we've had a question from a dairy farmer already that asked, okay, so you want to stack additional enterprises. We're already working 100 hours a week. How in the world do you add any more enterprises? We're already strapped. All right, here's the way you do it. You do it by creating autonomous, fully authority enterprises that are not hourly based. Let me give you an example. So we've taken the farm, every procedure we do, we've attached a value to it, doing time and motion studies, okay? I'm giving you literally a teaser here. I do whole day-long seminars about this, so just trust me here, okay? I'm just going to give you a little bit of a cream, all right? So using time and motion studies, we developed a value. What's the value of eviscerating a chicken? What's the value of raising a chick? What's the value of moving a herd of pigs? What's the value of caretaking a herd of cows, all right? So what we have is an opportunity package of all the procedures that we do and a value. What's the value of moving an eggmobile every day, collecting eggs, getting a dozen eggs? So we have pieces and service value. And that way, our partners, so see, we don't call them, hourly employees, but our partners can then look at this opportunity sheet and say, I'll take a herd of cows, 2 eggmobiles, 4,000 broilers, and I'm interested in making soap. So I'm going to add soap to my thing. It's not on your thing, but I want to add that to the mix. And so they can build their compensation package based on a procedure plan, okay, that has value on all these different tasks that we need done. So let me explain the difference. So let's say that we have an hourly employee that's in charge of caretaking a herd of cows every day. And our standard operating procedure, SOP, and so we have SOPs, like for example, the phrase, move chickens, that phrase has a 6-page SOP with it, explaining what the phrase move chickens means. Everybody with me? Okay? Because the quickest way to destroy relationships is unexpressed expectations. But I thought when I said you knew, if you don't tell, they don't know. We see this in marriages. Honey, I didn't know you meant that. Well, I can't read your mind. You've got to tell me, right? And that's why we've got books, men are clams, women are crowbars. Why? Because they got to pry it out of their husbands. Husbands just come in. Now, just so you know, 20% of marriages are opposite all this stuff. 80% are like that. And Teresa and I are opposite. She's the introvert, I'm the extrovert. So I'm the one, the communicator, okay? So I'm the woman. That's what we've had to realize. She's the man, I'm the woman. In the marriage books, men are from whatever, Mars, women are from Venus, all this stuff, all that stuff. We just have to invert all that marriage counsel and we get along great. Okay, we're getting ready to have 40th anniversary, all right? So we get along great because we finally, it took us 20 years or so to realize I'm the woman and she's the man, all right? Once we get that, then all the marriage books make sense. All right, so I'm just giving that out there in case some of you here are in that situation. Don't just get frustrated if this doesn't work for us because we're different, because 20% are different. All right. You didn't know you were going to get marriage counsel here today, but I'm all about that. All right. So here we are. Let's see, where was I? We're moving cows. All right. So we're going to pay a guy $20 an hour to go take this herd of cows. We've got an SOP, and the SOP includes when we say move cows, that includes taking the tote. Now the tote is like a repair, it's got a couple valves, pipe clamps, a couple insulators, gate handle, a little bit of wire, string, duct tape, whatever, okay? It's a repair tote. So if you go out there to move the cows, something's not right, chances are you can fix it all in the same trip. All right. So he's working a week, he says, man, I've never had this tote. Monday morning comes, he says, I'm not going to take that tote out there. I haven't used it all week. I'll just run out there and move the cows. So you see him head out there, and then 20 minutes later, you see a dust of smoke, dirt coming back, with a four-wheeler, flies up to the shop, runs in, grabs the tote, heads back out. And I'm sitting there. Now, I have a lot of tension. Is it bad enough to say something? He just cost me $10, okay, through negligence. How many times does this happen to happen before we have a conversation? How bad does it have to be before we have a conversation? Suddenly, I'm all in this internal turmoil, right? Because I don't like bad conversations. Ask any business person, what's the number one failure you have done in your business? 90% of it will be not firing someone soon enough. And just thinking, it'll get better, it'll get better. If I just love them, it'll get better. No, it won't. It'll just get worse, okay? So you've got to say something. Well, then you're in this angst of, oh man, I don't want to have this conversation, blah, blah, blah. Compare that to if that young person, that partner signed up for $40 a day, $40 a cow, caretake per day, and the same thing happens. But it's a given amount. Now suddenly there's no tension because he's on his time, not my time. And guess what? It just cost him a half an hour because he forgot the tote on his dime. Now he can't get done what he wanted to do, and it pushes his whole day. He's going to be late for his hot date tonight because he forgot the tote. Guess who's going to remember the tote tomorrow? All right? So we don't want time clock pushers. We want shared risk takers that will step up with shared risk and only get paid on performance. Now, a lot of people don't want this. But if you're paying me for each dozen eggs, and a fox gets into the chickens and kills half the chickens, then I'm not going to get paid as much. Yep, that's right. Welcome to the world of farming. You just became a shared risk taker with us. But I don't like that. Okay, bye. This becomes a self-vetting system so that you don't have to work with people that don't understand shared risk and all the investment you've made to keep this thing up and running. So we've got 20 people that work with us. Every single person is either on piecework, performance work, or a salary with a built-in bonus track. For example, our delivery driver gets a salary, but if the delivery, right now it's a girl, a lady, all right, if she goes over a certain benchmark per year, a certain number of pounds, she gets 60% of the delivery cost, income, and we only get 40% of the delivery income to pay for gas and maintenance and all that stuff. But she gets 60%. So we've had delivery drivers that get a $5,000 bonus at Christmas. Okay, guess what that does? That means they're nice to customers. That means they don't want to lose any poundage. And that means when they're driving down through town, through the city, and they see there's a new restaurant on the corner of Main and 34th, they come back and say, hey, there's a new restaurant. The marquee looks like they might be a fit for us. Maybe we ought to contact. So then she talks to somebody on the marketing, on the sales team. They call the chef, and we set up a sample box. She drops it off the next week trying to get her poundage up, right, so she can get a bonus. So the whole system is incentivized. And so we don't have employees as much as we have memorandums of understanding, MOUs, with each one of these people. And if you want to dig into this, my book, Fields of Farmers, this is all laid out. I've even got MOU templates in there for you to work with. But this is the way you build enterprises. So Bree wanted to say, well, Bree, what do you want to do? She said, well, I really want to do school tours. We don't do school tours. Can we do that? Sure, absolutely. So she launched Grass Stains Tours. And those are now up to almost 100 tours a year with school kids. We get 15,000 visitors a year. The school kids can go home with a coupon, $10 off your first purchase, bring mom and dad out to the farm store, develop customers. But it's her business. She develops the curriculum, she does the marketing, she maintains that site on the website, and she gets 3/4 of the income. We just get 1/4 as a royalty payment, okay? And she builds her own income. Jonathan wants to stay. Well, Jonathan, what do you want to do? I want to take over your farm shop. Jonathan was an apprentice. Man, I mean, he could fix anything. He'd rather be out there at 2 o'clock in the morning fixing something than sleeping or eating. And so, okay, well, we don't have to go to town that much. I mean, we do a lot of our repairs, but Dan and I are, we're reluctant repairmen. And so we do some stuff and we send stuff to town. He said, I can do it all. Okay. And so we created a business, his business, Farm Fix, LLC, Farm Fix. And he cleaned everything out of the shop, our rudimentary dirt floor shop. We poured concrete in there. He put fluorescent lights. I mean, you could do dental surgery in there, okay? and developed his own business in the shop, okay? And now here's the thing. Dad and I and Daniel for 60 years have had the pliers hanging on this wall. This wall. Jonathan says, I think I want to put them over here. Okay? We have to be fine with that. That's great, because for the first time in my life, I can go out and break a machine, bring it in, drop it off at the shop. It gets fixed faster and better than I could do it with a lot more love while I could go out and break another machine. I've never had that kind of freedom, okay? And now, the community, these neighbors that hear things about those weirdos over there, Can I come get a brake job? Can I come do this? Now, this is probably as illegal as sin, but we don't ask, we don't tell, we just do it. And it's building this wonderful bridge with our neighbors in the community that there's a repair shop right there. And so Jonathan is building bridges with people that we would never be able to reach through farming, but it's building public relations. And, hey, while my brake job's done, I'll go down to the farm store and buy some eggs and some sausage and a few, sticks of pork jerky, okay? And so all of this stuff works together. I just can't tell you what a joy it is to develop these kinds of partnerships. The new one for this summer, so for years, I've been saying, man, it sure be nice to have a children's day camp out here, just because we know that when people come to the farm, it's magic. It's magic. They can read about it, they can see a movie about it, but when they come, and they step in, they immerse themselves in an aesthetically and aromatically, sensually romantic place. It's magic. So, I've said for a long time, it'd be nice to have a summer camp. Well, Molly was an apprentice last year. She finishes, she says, are you serious about that? I said, absolutely. She says, well, I'd like to do that. Great. So Molly's doing, for the first time this year, a summer camp for kids, 20 kids. And it filled up, so fast it was crazy. And I'm not doing anything. She's doing curriculum, the everything. She's even hired a part-time helper, okay? It's her baby, not mine. But guess what? It's gonna bring new families, new energy, and new awareness. And these kids, when they're done, they're gonna be tugging on mom's elbow every day to come back to Polyface. Because selling the invisible, creating a memory, is more valuable than product. Okay? A lot of us think we're in the product business. But if we start thinking about we're in the memory business, we'll actually create a lot more income, and it'll make our product a lot easier to market and to sell. Okay, so lunatic tours. About 15 years ago, as more and more people started coming, and by the way, we still have a 24/7, 365 open door policy. Anyone can come at any time to see anything, anywhere, unannounced from anywhere in the world. Okay, that's our commitment to transparency. So it's common to just see families wandering around the fields. That's fine. And somebody says, oh no, the liability. You know what? We don't ask, we don't tell. It just happens. And everybody's fine, but we got this going on, and I'm the extrovert, I'm the people person, I love people. And I started getting tension because I wasn't getting any work done, because whenever I'd see somebody, I'd want to go over and, hey, you know, how are you, who are you, where are you from, you know, blah, 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 get their story. And so at the end of the week, I'd say, man, I didn't get anything done this week. Teresa, the introvert, she's disliking it because she's crowded with people, you know, crowding into her space all the time. She needs space. She's been known to hide in the closet when we have a field day. So, I mean, one day we had this field day, you know, she goes in and goes to this bathroom, and there's, you know, 5 Amish women sitting on our bed nursing their babies, you know. And this is the thing, all right? So anyway, and that kind of crowded her space a little bit. And So we're sitting there at breakfast one morning, you know, and I see these kind of shadows out on the lawn. You know, I look out, here's this mom and dad and, you know, 10 and 12-year-old son and daughter. And I see them walk up. They come up to the window. They do this. They say, this is where they live. This is where they live. I turn around and say, hi, how you doing? You know, Teresa says, give me the shotgun. I'm going to go shoot them. All right. So this creates tension. I'm just mentioning this because part of your story is how you let the story develop, maintain your sanity, and keep your marriage together, keep your relationships together, because all of us are different. You know, there's cleanies and messies. There's starters and finishers. There's spenders and savers. And by the way, you know, if anybody wants to know my success, it's because I married a woman more frugal than me. And you always put the saver in charge of the money. Okay? Don't put the spender in charge of the money, put the saver in charge of the money. So whoever the saver is in your family, they're in charge of the money. All right? That solves a lot of tension, because a lot of tension is about money. You know, when can we spend? How much risk do we take? Those are big issues, right? And so Sam would say, well, how can we solve this problem? I need to get freed up from having to talk to everybody that comes. You need space so that you don't feel crowded. So we came up with the lunatic tour. This is a scheduled tour, a hayride tour, a 2-hour tour, scheduled, that people have to, you know, sign up for. And the first year we did it for free. You know, just this is a way to funnel people into a time. So if you want to talk to me, this is the day you come. And Teresa knows, okay, we're going to have a bunch of people today. This is when I'm going to work in the office, you know, and I'm not going to go outside and work in the flower bed where somebody's going to, you know, come and talk to me. And I, by the same token, am freed up during the other days that I can just say hi and not greet people, because if they really want to see me, they'll come to a lunatic tour. Are you with me? So both of us were getting problems, tensions in our life solved with this. And we developed this through brainstorming, okay? Brainstorming is one of the best things you can ever do as a family, or as a business, okay? In the Lean Farm, which is Ben Hartman wrote as a takeoff from lean manufacturing through Toyota Corporation in Japan. He took those 10 principles of leanness, and one of those principles of leanness is one of the biggest weak points in any business is failure to capture all of the ideas from everybody involved in the business. And so we routinely schedule brainstorming sessions. If we've got an issue, we do brainstorming sessions. So everybody has come together, focus on one issue, and bring your ideas. The only way you can get a family or a business brainstorming session to work is the principle that nobody can say a single negative word during the brainstorming session. All it is to get ideas, okay? There's no judgment, no prejudice, no analysis, no nothing. You come with ice cream and milk and cookies or whatever, you make a fun time, and you just collect ideas. Because timid people, the introverts need to have space to talk without somebody pouncing on them, okay? So we collect the ideas. And then you go to your corners and you digest it, you think about it. Then you come back 2 or 3 weeks later, and then you do your analysis, you do your feedback, okay? But at least in the brainstorming, everybody is affirmed. Every idea, no matter how crazy it is, that's a great idea. Good job, that's a great idea, okay? Then you get everything on the table, you collect everything. So out of that came this lunatic tour thing. So the first year, we did it for nothing. What happened was people didn't show up for their tours. As the season progressed, because they didn't have any skin in the game. So the next year we said, well, we'll charge $10 a seat. That solved it. People started coming. Then a few years later, we added up to 20. So now we do 12 of these a year, 100 adults, kids are free, and they're all full. And this has generated an additional, $36,000 a year for us in lunatic tours, between what they buy in the store and the seat price. But this has created a whole full-time salary out of solving a tension issue. That's where I'm going with this. So, the Japanese term, the Japanese symbol for crisis is the same symbol for opportunity. So just remember, whatever you're in crisis about, whatever you're in tension about, that is also your best opportunity. And so now, Wendy, my assistant, out of time. Wendy, my assistant, she's on salary, yes, because she does the website, social media, answers the phone, handles the retail store when it's open, all that stuff. She has a component of her salary where she's free to do any event she wants to do, and she gets 25% of the gate receipts. Okay, gross gate receipts, she gets 25% of it. So she's able to do. So she's done, yoga on the farm dam, bird watching, cheese classes, wild foods assays, through the woods, wild foods. So she brings in local experts, whatever, butchery, process, preserving, canning, all sorts of things. She has the freedom to develop all those that she wants to do at a take. See, farms can do three things. They do education, they do health, and they do entertainment. Education, health, and entertainment. Health, by the way, is part of selling, okay? Selling good food, nutrient-dense food. But entertainment from experiences, education from coaching, ecology. See, our customers are looking for us as food coaches. Our techno-glitzy culture right now has disempowered so many people. We have so much choice. There's a business book called The Paradox of Choice, and it's all about the paralysis of choice. If you lived right here in this neck of the woods 600 years ago, and you were, grew up Aboriginal 600 years ago right here, you would have limited choices of what you're going to do in life. Are you with me? Today, we have incredible choice of what to buy, what to do, where to go, all sorts of choice. And this choice is so broad and so eclectic that we think it empowers us, but it actually puts many of us into a state of paralysis of how can I decide? Because I've got so much choice. So our customers are the same way. They've got all sorts of brands, all sorts of labels, all sorts of places. And so we need to position ourselves as their coach for nutrition, for food, for choice, for how do you find an ecological farm? How do you find a farm that will create a planet that your grandchildren will enjoy living in? Okay? We need to take our customers by the hand and lead them, coach them through into that territory through information, through education, through entertainment, through all the venues at our disposal, so that they look at us as the genius, as the guru, as the leader of how they're going to make those choices into the future. So we've done a lot of things to develop this destination place. One of the neatest things we've just done this year, I've been wanting to do this for a long time, we finally got it done, is a corn box. You're all familiar with sandboxes. Well, just imagine a sandbox that's not sand, but corn, whole shells of corn. So, you put a bunch of, beach kind of stuff in there and Tonka trucks and all this stuff. We can't get the kids out of it. See, 70% of all food decisions are made by people under 10 years old. 70% of menu selections are chosen by people under 10. Those are kids, by the way, in case you're missing the math. All right. And so a lot of times the way into mom's heart is through the memory of the child. And when they're tugging on mom's elbow saying, I want to go back to that farm with the corn box. Look, a kid could play in a sandbox anywhere. but you got to come out to our farm to play in a corn box, okay? And corn's a lot easier to dump out of your pockets than sand. So moms like it too. Now, just so we are clear, we do not have a petting zoo. We've made a big point to not have a petting zoo. Why? Because we've Bambified and Disneyfied ourselves to death. Okay? We don't need to have well, this chicken is named Oliver. This chicken we eat. You know, we don't need that kind of thing in kids' heads. So we don't do a petting zoo. But they can go to any chicken and pet it. They can go to a cow. They can go to the field. They can go to the pigs. We just tell them make sure you keep moving when you're in with the pigs because they are omnivores. And so you got to keep that going. The other thing that's important as we move the business forward is to appreciate mutual interdependence. I mentioned before, you can't do it all, okay? Nobody can do it all. You're not gifted at everything. So mutual interdependence rather than fierce independence is usually a better way to move our businesses forward. So think about the stuff that you really like. Remember those 3 universes I said? What you're good at, what you know, what you love? All right, the more we can focus our attention in the center of that, the better off we're going to be, and we let other people do it. If you're familiar with the business, protocol of StrengthsFinder, the whole premise of StrengthsFinder is when you and I have been told, you got to work on your weaknesses. Their position is no. You find partners to work on your weaknesses, to do your weaknesses, and you focus on your strengths and finding partners that will do your weaknesses. So when I talk about marketing, I'm not saying you have to make the calls. Some of you, the idea of making a cold call, getting a customer, sends you into chills and shivers, right? But if nobody makes a sale, nothing happens. We can talk about worms and soil and fruit and nuts and cows all day, but nothing happens until there's a sale, okay? And so somebody has to do that sale. So developing these partnerships, mutual interdependence. People say, why don't you grow your grain? I say, well, we lost all of our soil, people growing grain. We have good neighbors that are down in the valleys. We can haul their grain up on our hills and do the animal thing. We've got hot dogs, farrowing. We don't farrow pigs. We use folks in the area. Why? Because we got 15,000 visitors a year, and pigs are omnivores, and there's nothing as cute as a sow nursing piggies, and we don't need the papers to talk about a 2-year-old just got eaten by a sow out at our place. And so we get piggies from people who don't want people on their farms. We bring their piggies in who aren't as aggressive and that sort of thing. Gardening, hatcheries, there's all sorts of things. Then you've got collaborations, okay? Collaborations with other artisans. So we offer a neighbor's apple juice. We offer a neighbor's kombucha. We have 2 guys making artisanal pet food that we offer. A cheese maker locally. A lady making lacto ferments and sauerkrauts. We can do her stuff. A lady making soap. We have a couple ladies that do soup and meat pies. They buy the meat stuff from us at wholesale like a restaurant, then we mark it up and sell it through to our customers. Snack sticks, Carpe Donut. Carpe Donut is a guy that's been in business for about 12 years in the area. He has a donut vehicle. Carpe diem, seize the day. Carpe Donut, seize the donut, okay? And so he has this donut cart. He goes to events and weddings and corporate retreats and stuff. This thing is out 300 events a year. And so this year he's adding our hot dogs to his donut repertoire. So now he can give you a hot dog entree and a donut dessert. So now you got the whole meal there. We're working with a local artisanal wool producer. He's got the only merino sheep in the area, and he is perhaps the go-to artisanal wool producer for spinners and weavers and things, artisans in the country. He's in our county, and so we offer his stuff as well. We've just offered our latest addition is a lady that started an artisanal pasta business. She's always been getting eggs from us, and so now we offer our customers pasta with Polyface eggs in them. So there's that's the number one thing under there. The point is that as we move forward and as we scale, we're looking to develop partnerships, we're looking to develop collaborations, and that is all a part of touching more land, touching more people, touching more food to caress integrity into our society. And that's a good thing to do. And I suggest that that is a noble enough thing. I appreciated the B Corp stuff that was shown. And what we kept hearing, that thread, that common thread through it was service and ministry and healing, service, ministry, and healing. And that's where we are. And we're about serving the soil, serving our community, and ministering service to our neighbors and our friends. And if that motivates us more than money, if that motivates us more than empire, if that motivates us more than business, our business will simply be drug along, and we'll be attracted to people who that value chain will just drag along by the sheer nobility, sacredness, and righteousness of our mission. And so I encourage us all to embrace that and to enjoy it, and move our businesses successfully forward into that kind of authenticity for our culture, our civilization, and our world. Now may all of your carrots grow long and straight. May your radishes be large but not pithy. May tomato blossom end rot affect your Monsanto neighbor's tomatoes. May the dingoes be struck blind at your pastured chickens. May all of your culinary experiments be delectably palatable. May the rain fall gently on your fields, the wind be always at your back, your children rise and call you blessed, and may we all make our nest a better place than we inherited. God bless you. Thank you for coming. Thank you.